And we're back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be looking at the updated NBA MVP ladder. They recently released this, I believe, maybe like around an hour ago, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and look at the players that are on this list. And we're going to dive right in, actually. Obviously, number one is Nikola Jokic. There is absolutely zero excuse for him to not be number one. Everyone knows his ridiculous value, and everyone knows what he does on the Denver Nuggets. He is a triple-double machine. And simply put, without the Denver Nuggets, they would not have the record that they have. They sit now 12-10 in the Western Conference. Not a very good record. In fact, while it is a winning record, it is, in terms of for Western Conference standards, it's really bad. But we know that Jokic is incredibly valuable. When he's on the court, the Denver Nuggets have the best offensive rating, the best net rating, the best field goal percentage, the best three-point percentage, and the best assist-to-turnover ratio. When he's off the court, they have the worst of every single one of those stats that I just mentioned. So, literally, without Nikola Jokic, this Denver Nuggets team would be nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if they would be worse than the Detroit Pistons or the Washington Wizards without Jokic. A team that they ended up losing to with Jokic on the roster after Jokic had a ridiculous triple-double performance, being the third player in NBA history with at least 56 points, 16 rebounds, and 8 assists in a game. And he lost. He's the only player to do that in a losing losing effort. The only other two players to have a similar stat line to his are Luka Doncic and Elgin Baylor. Luka Doncic did this on the 27th of December when he dropped 60 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists, and the Mavs ended up winning. Elgin Baylor did this all the way in 1959, 64 points, 17 rebounds, and 8 assists along with that. And I'm pretty sure that in that year, Elgin Baylor was serving in the military, and they still ended up winning that game. Jokic dropped a similar stat line like this. It wasn't 60 points, but again, 56 is 56. And they lost. And they lost by a wide margin, too. That is inexcusable to lose to the worst team when Jokic is putting up a stat line like this. And there's really, at least for me, there's no argument for who the best player in the NBA is right now, and there's no argument with who the most valuable player in the NBA is right now, and that is Nikola Jokic. There is an argument, though, on who should be the runner-up. As of right now, the NBA updated the MVP ladder, and they say that Giannis is right now the second in the MVP ladder, just below Nikola Jokic. And while I do agree that Giannis Antetokounmpo is the second best player in the NBA, you guys know I'm a big fan of Giannis, and I think very highly of him. He is just as efficient as he is dominant, and he's averaging 32 points per game, I believe, and shooting around 60% from the field. Those are very, very good stat lines. However, I don't think he should be higher in the MVP polls and in the MVP ratings over somebody like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Context is very important when we're talking about MVPs. Team record is also very important when we're talking about MVPs. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have a 19-5 record, and they are leading the entire Western Conference in wins. They are the head of the entire conference. There is absolutely no reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo should be ranked higher in the MVP standings than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And it's not like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is having a bad year either. He's averaging 30 points per game, 5 rebounds, 6.3 assists per game, all the while shooting 56% on effective field goal percentage, 51% from the field, and let's see, I believe he started shooting way more threes this year than he did last year, but still he's averaging roughly around the same three-point percentage at 34%. So very, very efficient, and not only that, this performance and these kinds of performances from him are giving the Thunder wins. Not to mention the fact that the Thunder aren't even a completely healthy team as of right now because they still don't have Chet Holmgren, who's been sidelined with a very major injury. So the fact that this Thunder team is 19-5, still leading the Western Conference, And the Western Conference is incredibly difficult, as I've said many times. And he's only third in MVP voting behind Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't agree with that at all. The Bucks, they are sixth in the Eastern Conference, and even being sixth in the Eastern Conference, that's actually really bad, because his team has only won 13 games, and they've lost 11 of them. They had a really rough start in this season, and I understand that, with the winning streak and the recency bias, Giannis is going to be a favorite, but he should not be a favorite over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, MVPs, you have to take winning into account. That is what determines value when you're looking at a player who is the most valuable player in the entirety of the NBA. Like, obviously, I have no problem with Jokic being ranked at number one, despite the fact that he's also a low seed and in the same conference as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The difference between Jokic and Giannis, in my opinion, is the fact that without Giannis, the Bucks are going to be nothing. Like, that's for sure. Same way how without Jokic, the Denver Nuggets aren't a competent team. But you could also say the same about the Thunder, who they aren't a competent team without SGA. And you could also, the argument for Jokic is that, these stat lines are completely otherworldly. And just the fact that this team goes from being the best when Jokic is on the floor to the worst when Jokic is off the floor, that implements value. That shows that there is a lot of value in Jokic's game. And it's not necessarily like it's just empty stats. But again, the win category is very, very important to me. And I think a lot of these rankings, they're very much sleeping on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this, whether or not you guys agree that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is being slept on, or whether or not you think Giannis should be in the top two for MVP conversation. I personally don't. He's also playing in a weaker conference, so that's also another reason, but that's besides the point. So next in the MVP ladder is Jason Tatum. Makes a little bit of sense. I can see why Jason Tatum is going to be this high in the MVP ladder. The Celtics, they're 20-5. They're one win short of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they've been obviously they've been a well-oiled machine. They're just like that. The Boston Celtics are just like that. And with the roster that they have, it makes sense that they're just like that. But again, MVP is usually the best player on the best team, and that's what Jason Tatum is. And it's not like Jason Tatum doesn't have the stats to prove it. He's averaging 28 points per game, 8.9 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 54% shooting in effective field goal. Now, the individual field goal percentages, like 45% from the field and 36% from three, they aren't on par to SGA. But regardless, I don't really have that much of a problem with Jason Tatum being ranked this high in the MVP polling. Obviously, he's not going to win it. I don't think he's going to win the MVP, especially with the team that he has, because that's really the big argument with Jason Tatum. It's like, sure, he is the best player on the best team, but this is literally the best team. You can go no wrong with this team, having Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and Kristaps Porzingis all in the starting lineup. It's definitely going to make you play like you are the best player in the league, like without a doubt. So I can see the argument for why a lot of people don't want Jason Tatum winning the MVP, especially when Jokic is breaking records and doing ridiculous things while his team is lacking. Like, there's a very, very clear cut, just the value. Like, if you take Jason Tatum off of the Celtics would still be a playoff team. And if you take Jokic off of the Nuggets, then the Nuggets, they would be probably the worst team in the entirety of the NBA. And that's really the big difference maker in these in the value department. Now, the next player in the MVP ladder, someone that I'm actually very surprised to see on the MVP ladder, is Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, I don't know why Karl Anthony Towns is on this list. I can't even lie. I mean, I understand that the Knicks, they're winning a lot, but they were winning a lot last season, and that was without Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, not to say that Karl Anthony Towns' stats are bad. In fact, I mean, you can make an argument that they're even better on the Knicks than they were in his time with the Timberwolves. But I mean, his time with the Timberwolves was a little bit meh, 24 points per game this season, 13.6 rebounds per game in this season, all the while shooting 59% on effective field goal percentage, 52% from the field, and 44% from three. Very, very, very efficient. I just don't see why he's ranked this high. Again, this Knicks team has the help with Jalen Brunson, and he's also a very competent player that should be getting a little bit more attention. But again, he's not really having as big of a game or like as important big games as Karl Anthony Towns has been having this season. So that's probably why he's not ranked so high in the MVP rankings as of right now. But still, like I just don't see Karl Anthony Towns being ranked this high, especially over a player as gifted and as talented as Luka Doncic. I mean, we already know Luka Doncic and the impact that he has on the Mavs. He is always, and I mean always, an MVP frontrunner. In almost every single poll that I look at to begin the NBA season, everyone thinks that Luka Doncic is going to win the MVP. But of course, Nikola Jokic just says, I am the better foreign player, and just completely breaks that narrative apart. Now, the only way that I can really see Luka Doncic winning an MVP is if the Dallas Mavericks are clear-cut the best team in the Western Conference. That is really the only time that I can see him winning the MVP. With the roster that he has with Kyrie Irving, PJ Washington, he's playing pretty solid at times, and Klay Thompson from here and there, again, arguably, like, I'm not even going to mention Klay Thompson. I scratch that. Klay Thompson has been a little bit more of a liability than he has been of a reliability in these last few games. But Karl Anthony Towns being ranked over someone like Luka Doncic is not something that I necessarily agree with. Again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. It could also have to do with the fact that Luka Doncic is missing a couple of games. But again, in these games that he's missed, it's not like the Mavericks are really like winning all that many games. They did win one game without Luka Doncic, but again, you get rid of Luka on this team and they go nowhere. And the seventh player on this list is Anthony Davis. He was a front runner at the beginning of the season, but of course he ended up just playing bad and started laying eggs. I've said this several times, he is a very, very frustrating player to watch. It's like he doesn't try to play basketball very well unless he's like bullied or forced into playing well. And it's like, okay, you had these great performances in the first few games. That's all you're getting from me. It's weird. It's incredibly weird. But him being on this list, I don't really have that much of a problem with. It's just really ridiculous how the drop-off was so immense for Anthony Davis. Next player on this list is Donovan Mitchell, best player on the best team in the Eastern Conference. Nothing more that I really need to say about that. His stats are pretty solid, but again, this Cleveland team is also pretty solid, which is a reason why he's ranked so low, because you can probably take Donovan Mitchell off this team and this Cleveland Cavaliers team would most likely still be a playoff team, especially with how the Bucks have been playing recently. Next player on this list is Victor Wembanyama, a center who I think shoots way too many threes despite being 7'4". But again, this is a really this is like, how should I say this? I feel like him being ranked at number 9, it's just a hype train, honestly. It's really just hype because I mean, really, in my opinion, the most valuable asset on this team aside from Victor is Chris Paul. I mean, every single time Chris Paul gets added to a team, the team starts winning. And again, I'm not saying that Chris Paul's stats warrant an MVP, but again, there's another player on the team that is impacting wins more so than maybe Victor Wembanyama is. And again, maybe that's just because I think Victor shoots one too many threes, but I don't know. I don't really think he should be that high in the rankings. I just don't think so. But then again, I don't know who else you would put over somebody like Victor Wembanyama. Like, to be perfectly frank here, I don't think there really is anyone that could be over Victor Wembanyama, just because, like, again, not that many impactful players on one team, and it's not really that easy to pinpoint exactly who the top 10 is. But again, so maybe this is just like, they had to pick someone to be in the top 10, and that ended up being Victor, because while I don't think he should be at number 9, I can't really say that someone else deserves that number 9 spot, if that makes sense. And then finally, at 10 is Trae Young. Trae Young is the only all-star on his team. He is like in the middle of a rebuild era with the Hawks, and it makes sense why he is ranked at number 10, honestly. Not all that great, especially with team record. Very inefficient. But again, there are times where he does get the job done. He scores the ball very well. By far one of the best passing point guards in the NBA, if not the best passing point guard in the NBA right now. He is over Tyrese Halliburton, no question about it. And really, I don't see a problem with him being ranked at number 10 either. I don't see a problem with him being ranked this low. He definitely deserves the consideration for it. And that performance against the Knicks is most likely giving him a little bit of a boost in terms of, now granted, he didn't really play all that well, but he ended up getting the win. And he is also, fun fact, he is the leading scorer at the point guard position in Madison Square Garden with 26 points per game. So the narrative that he is the king of New York, he really does fit that narrative. So that's all that I really have to say on these MVP rankings. Let me know if you guys agree with these MVP rankings. Maybe if you guys disagree with Giannis being ranked at number 2 and think SGA deserves a little bit more respect like me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But with that out of the way, we're going to go into the fifth and the final segment where we go into NBA predictions and NFL predictions. We're going to cover both of those, kill two birds with one stone, right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.